Most of us are navigating life using outdated maps, waiting for a clear sign or a definitive diagnosis before we finally decide to move. We struggle with the weight of past regrets, the complexity of building real community, and the fear that our best chapters are already behind us. Today, we're stripping back those layers to examine the first 5 years of Brunansky's blog, the underlying mechanics of personal agency, historical context, and the art of moving forward. We're going to deconstruct how to transform your paralyzing regrets into actionable diagnostic tools for the future. By the end of this deep dive, you'll have the framework to shed your past failures and reclaim the pen to your own narrative. Grab your coffee, tea, or wine. It's time for the sidebar.
So imagine for a second that you break your arm.
Ouch. Yeah, not fun at all.
Right, not fun. So you go to the hospital
Right.
and they take an x-ray. And right there on the screen is this, jagged, glowing white line.
Yeah, you can see exactly what's wrong.
Exactly. The doctor just points to it. It's binary, right? Broken or not broken. It is a clean, undeniable fact.
And it's incredibly comforting in a weird way. Like, we love when things are visible. We love when our problems can be neatly categorized and just, diagnosed.
Totally. But what happens when you try to x-ray a human life?
Oh, man. That doesn't really work.
Right. When you step into the world of personal fulfillment or navigating relationships or handling massive regrets, suddenly that diagnostic machine is useless.
Yeah.
The landscape is entirely murky.
There's just no clear linear path.
No path at all.
And the thing is, we spend an enormous amount of energy looking for that definitive textbook. Like some expensive masterclass from a self-help guru that will just hand us the x-ray for our lives.
We really do.
We want someone to point at the screen and say, here is exactly how you fix it.
But the reality is that the most profound, actionable wisdom usually isn't found in a textbook. It's hidden in plain sight. It's, scattered across the margins of everyday experiences.
Yeah, the stuff we just walk right past.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what we are exploring today. We have a really fascinating mission for this deep dive.
I'm so excited for this one.
We are diving into the first 5 years of a highly curated, incredibly eclectic blog. It's written by someone who is, by all definitions, a modern Renaissance man.
The breadth of this author's background is just staggering. I mean, we are looking at a mind shaped by classical music, vocal performance, filmmaking.
The global travel alone is wild.
Right. Extensive global travel across 50 states and multiple continents, plus high-level artificial intelligence and digital marketing.
When someone operates across that many disciplines, their output is going to be wildly diverse.
Yeah.
I mean, we are looking at a stack of material that jumps without warning.
Oh, completely without warning.
Like, you go from a box office review of Captain America, Civil War, directly to a gritty mafia short story.
And then to an essay on Kierkegaard.
Yeah. Or a travelogue about getting stuck in New York City traffic.
Yeah.
So our goal today is to extract the overarching themes from this seemingly random collection. We want to pull out the actionable life lessons for you.
But before we jump into the deep end, let's establish a ground rule for how we are going to handle this material.
Good idea.
Because the author lights explicit philosophical think pieces, it would be really easy to just zero in on those, right? Like overanalyze them and ignore the rest.
Just treat it like a philosophy class.
Exactly. But we are not going to do that. Every piece of content here holds equal weight. We are going to use those philosophical essays as a lens.
A lens to decode the deeper stuff.
Right, to decode the mechanics hidden inside his short stories, his travel diaries, and his film reviews.
So let's start with the foundation, because this author comes from a heavy background in the performing arts, specifically classical music, that completely colors how he views human existence.
It's his whole framework.
It really is. There is this incredibly popular cultural idea that life is essentially a choose-your-own-adventure book. You know the ones from when we were kids?
Oh, yeah, where you keep your finger on the previous page just in case you die.
Yes, exactly. You make a choice, flip to page 42, and see which predetermined ending you get.
But it's a very passive way to view the world, honestly. In a choose-your-own-adventure book, the ink is already dry.
Yeah, the pages are finalized.
Right, the endings already exist, and you are just stumbling through the maze trying to find them. The author completely rejects that framework.
He hates that idea.
Yeah, in a foundational essay titled Music for a Musician, he argues that life is absolutely not a finalized book. Instead, he presents this beautiful alternative. He says life is sheet music being written every single day.
uninked sheet music.
Yeah.
That is a massive paradigm shift.
It changes everything about personal agency. I mean, for anyone who hasn't played in an orchestra, sheet music is the roadmap.
It's the blank staff.
Right, where a composer places the notes, the rests, and the rhythms so a musician can eventually play the song. The author is arguing that your day-to-day decisions, your tiny reactions, your leaps of faith, those are the literal notes being printed onto the page in real time.
You are not discovering a story. You are actively composing a song.
You are building the melody as you go.
And this ties perfectly into another essay he wrote called Chapters. We turn the page. Because if you are the composer, you have to actually write something.
You can't just stare at a blank page.
Right. He heavily advocates for taking risks over just accepting the status quo. He makes this profound point that learning from a massive, crushing failure is vastly superior to living a life in a state of wonder.
That is such a good point.
Because if you just play the exact same safe note every single day, you don't have a song. You just have a dial tone.
A dial tone. Wow. And he takes this philosophy of active creation and applies it directly to his film criticism.
Oh, I love his film reviews.
Yeah, let's look at how he reviews the indie film Sing Street. It is the perfect cinematic embodiment of this sheet music philosophy.
I love his take on Sing Street. For context, if you haven't seen it, this movie is set in 1980s Ireland.
And the economy is rough?
Super bleak. The environment is depressing, and MTV is just becoming this massive disruptive cultural force. The protagonists are these incredibly awkward, disenfranchised high school kids.
Just absolute misfits.
Yeah. And they decide to start a band and shoot music videos, basically just to navigate their miserable school lives and impress a girl.
But look at the mechanics of what those kids are actually doing. The author points out that the film resonates so deeply not because the music is polished, because it's not.
No, it's very raw.
Right, but it resonates because these teenagers are actively composing their lives. When you are a teenager, you have almost zero control over your environment. You were told where to go, what to wear, how to act.
You're just following orders.
Exactly. But these kids aren't waiting for the universe to hand them a better high school experience. They are taking the raw, awkward, painful notes of their daily lives, putting on makeup, picking up synthesizers, and arranging that pain into new wave music.
They take the pen and they write the song.
They really do.
But I have to push back here for a second.
Okay, go for it.
If life is sheet music, and we are composing it live on the stage, isn't it completely terrifying when the music just abruptly stops?
Oh, absolutely.
Or when your song gets rejected? Think about jazz improvisation. If I'm up there improvising a solo and I hit a terrible, dissonant wrong note, the panic is real.
It's a horrible feeling.
Or worse, what if someone just takes the instrument out of your hands entirely?
That fear of the music stopping is very real. And the author actually explores that exact terror by looking at a project that failed spectacularly.
Oh, the Superman documentary.
Yes, he reviews a documentary called The Death of Superman Lives. What happened?
This is such a fascinating chapter in Hollywood history.
It really is.
So back in 1998, Tim Burton had just completely revolutionized the superhero genre with his dark, gothic Batman films. So Warner Brothers taps him to direct a brand new Superman movie.
And he casts Nicolas Cage as Superman.
Which is a casting choice that immediately signals we are dealing with a wildly different melody.
To put it mildly.
Yeah, exactly. And the author pulls these insane details from the documentary about what this movie was actually going to be. It was loosely based on the Death of Superman comic arc, but Burton completely rebuilt it.
Superman wasn't even going to wear spandex.
Right. He was going to wear this translucent, glowing supersuit powered by fiber optics.
Which sounds kind of awesome.
It does. And he had a shape-shifting robotic assistant named Kay. The villain, Brainiac, was going to float through space in a giant skull-shaped spaceship filled with an intergalactic menagerie.
There were giant spiders, there were ninjas.
It was going to be this radical, bizarre, completely unprecedented vision.
But it never saw the light of day.
No, it didn't.
Warner Brothers pulled the plug just weeks before production was set to begin. The financial risk of Burton's radical vision was just too high for them to stomach.
So the music was stopped right as the orchestra was raising their instruments.
Perfectly said. And the author highlights this incredible quote from the documentary's director, John Schnepp. He says, "Sometimes the interest in the what if is stronger than the actual final product because it fills your mind with the possibility of what could have been."
It's the ultimate unplayed sheet music.
Exactly.
But going back to my jazz analogy, when your movie gets canceled or when you play that wrong note,
Yeah.
How do you recover from that silence?
Well, the author answers that question through a really touching short story he wrote called Donato. It directly addresses how we survive when the sheet music gets torn out.
Donato is a brilliant piece of writing.
It really is beautiful.
The story drops us into this idyllic, vibrant town. You can almost feel the ocean breezes and smell the fresh food from the local farmers. And the absolute heartbeat of this community is a man named Donato.
He's a local guitarist.
Right. Every single night as the sun goes down, he sits in the town square and plays.
The author specifically describes Donato's music as the soundtrack of the town. He is a humble man who plays entirely for others, never for his own ego.
Never. The men feel inspired by his melodies. The women feel a deep emotional connection to his rhythms.
But then the wrong note hits.
Yeah.
It's late fall, and Donato starts noticing that the sounds of the night are getting a little quieter. Days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months, and after a year, Donato is trapped in complete, total silence.
He goes entirely deaf.
Completely deaf. This man, whose entire identity and contribution to the world is built on sound, loses his hearing. He collapses to the floor in absolute heartbreak.
It is the ultimate cancellation of his life's work. The physical instrument of his body has been taken away.
But here is the mechanism of resilience that the author is trying to teach us. In jazz, when you play a wrong note, the note itself isn't the tragedy.
Right.
It's what you do next that determines the melody. The very next evening, Donato walks back out into the town square, guitar in hand. A lifetime of playing has taught his hands everything they need to know.
He plays entirely from muscle memory.
Yes, he can't hear the chords, he can't hear the applause from the crowd, but he plays with just as much passion as he ever did.
And the most beautiful detail of the story, the town never even realizes he went deaf.
They have no idea.
They just keep enjoying the soundtrack of their lives.
He refused to stop composing. He adapted to the massive failure of his own body and found a new way to write the sheet music.
And you can see this exact same admiration for resilience, for actively choosing to write the narrative, despite the odds in how the author analyzes superhero films.
Oh, definitely. Look at his review titled Happy Birthday, Spider-Man.
Yeah, he doesn't love Spider-Man because of the cool web shooters.
Not at all.
He loves Peter Parker because Peter is just an ordinary, struggling kid who is handed an unbelievable circumstance, and he chooses to put on the mask.
He chooses to write a heroic narrative to protect his neighborhood.
And he expands on this even more explicitly in his review of Captain America: Civil War. He points out that the movie is overflowing with massive personalities.
You've got Iron Man, Black Panther, Spider-Man.
All these huge characters, but it fundamentally remains a Captain America movie. Why? Because the author recognizes that Captain America is the one holding the pen.
Yes, it is Cap's unyielding choices, his refusal to sign away his agency that completely shakes the foundation of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and drives the plot forward.
Cap doesn't let the government tell him what page to turn to. He writes the notes himself.
So if we distill all of this, from the Irish teenagers in Sing Street, to the tragedy of Tim Burton's Superman, to the deaf guitarist Donato, what is the actionable takeaway for the listener?
The actionable lesson is that you must recognize the ink of your life is not dry. You are the composer.
Exactly. When you face a sudden setback, when a massive project gets canceled, or when you experience a devastating personal loss, you don't throw away the instrument.
You use the constraint to write a new melody. Take the risk, be the driving force in your own plot, and keep playing, even if you have to play from muscle memory.
That is so well put.
Okay, I love the empowerment of that, but let's be realistic for a second.
Uh-oh, here comes the reality check.
Yeah. If everyone is just walking around aggressively composing their own individual sheet music, taking risks, and driving their own plots, that sounds like a recipe for terrible, chaotic noise.
A bunch of soloists playing over each other.
Exactly. A symphony requires an orchestra. You can't just play your trumpet in the middle of a quiet violin solo. How do these individual melodies actually harmonize with other people?
That is the crucial next step in the author's philosophy. It brings us to the second major theme, the architecture of community.
How do we actually build the heart of a society?
Right, and to understand this, we have to look at another one of his short stories titled Raccogliere.
Raccogliere is an Italian word that translates roughly to gather or collect. And this story is a profound look at what actually holds people together.
It takes place in a town that feels very similar to Donato's town, actually.
Yeah, very similar vibe. Early on, the author notes a fascinating architectural detail in this town. The citizens carve their own faces into the stone pillars of the law buildings.
It's a permanent reminder to the politicians that the people carry the weight of the town, not the government.
I love that detail. And the true center of this society isn't the government building at all. It's a restaurant called Racogliere, run by the beloved town cook.
Every Friday and Saturday night, this cook's food acts as a magnet, just pulling the entire town together.
The magic of the restaurant isn't just the culinary skill. I mean, the food is great, but it's the intimacy. It's the slow, deliberate connection, the laughter, and the shared experience of the meal.
But then a disruption arises in the form of a smooth-talking stranger.
Always a smooth talker.
Always. The narrator says this stranger reminds him of dirty river water merchants, but he has this undeniable charisma.
He approaches the cook and flatters him, right?
Oh, yeah. He says, "Your food is brilliant, but you are working too hard. Let me take over the managerial duties. Let me run the business side so you can just focus on your art."
And the cook, who is trusting and tired, agrees.
And the moment the stranger takes control, he begins to commercialize the joy. He completely separates the passion from the process.
He tries to scale the unscalable.
Exactly. He opens the restaurant every single night instead of just the weekends.
He hires more staff, but he overworks the original cook until the cook literally collapses from physical illness.
It's brutal.
The stranger turns this beautiful organic community gathering into an aggressive profit machine. And what happens when you try to mass-produce intimacy?
The quality completely deteriorates.
Yeah. The author describes the pans going unwashed, the cooking blades get rusty. The townsfolk actually start getting physically sick from eating the food.
And look at the stranger's reaction. When things fall apart, he blames the staff for being lazy. Then he blames the patrons for expecting too much. He refuses to take any responsibility. By the time the original cook recovers from his illness and walks back into town, the community is fractured. People are yelling at each other in the streets. The trust is gone.
So the cook goes to his restaurant and finds a note pinned to the door from the stranger. And the note blames the cook for the failure before the stranger just skips town.
Coward.
Right. So how does the cook respond? He has this massive realization. The physical building, the brick and mortar of Racogliere, was never actually the heart of the city.
The building had become infected by greed.
So he takes a match, sets the stranger's note on fire, and burns his own restaurant completely to the ground.
He levels the architecture. It's wild. The only physical object that survives the fire is one old cast iron pot.
When the townsfolk gather around the ashes, they're devastated. But the cook tells them that the restaurant didn't keep the city alive. They did.
Their appreciation for each other, the friction and heat of their shared lives, was the true ingredient.
He never rebuilds the restaurant. Instead, he spends the rest of his life walking from house to house, using that one cast iron pot to teach individual families how to cook.
He rebuilds the community from the inside out, kitchen by kitchen.
It is a stark warning about letting vagabonds commercialize your joy. And what's fascinating is that you can see this exact same prioritization of people over places in the author's real-life travelogues.
Oh, absolutely. We see the Racogliere philosophy applied in a post called Wedding Travels, There and Back.
This piece perfectly bridges his high-minded philosophy with the gritty, mundane realities of actual travel.
The setup is that the author gets invited to be in his friend Scott's wedding. They have been friends for 20 years, all the way back to 7th grade homeroom.
But the wedding isn't just down the street, it's in South Africa.
Specifically at the Bonamanzi Game Reserve.
So the author has to endure this grueling 16-hour flight from JFK to Johannesburg. He writes about the sheer physical toll, like sleeping in 2-hour spurts, getting violently jolted awake every time the plane's landing gear shifts.
But he doesn't wallow in the misery. Around hour 13, he notes that the flight attendants start handing out free South African Pilsners.
He describes it as if the angels themselves started singing.
He actively searches for joy in the grueling journey.
And when he finally arrives at the reserve, the environment is wild. It's a literal wildlife preserve. He sends a picture to his brother, and they joke that it looks exactly like Jurassic Park.
There are monkeys that will break in and steal your belongings if you leave a window open.
He watches a massive crocodile actively devouring another animal. He sees wild giraffes just casually walking past his room.
It is the most exotic, overwhelming scenery imaginable, but amidst all of this incredible architecture of nature, what does he focus on?
He focuses entirely on the human element. The real magic for him isn't the giraffes or the crocodiles.
No, it's looking at his friend Scott and seeing him happier than he has ever been. It's the culmination of a 20-year friendship.
It's the conversations with the bride's witty great-grandmother during a car ride. It's the new bonds he forges with a group of girls from Germany and Italy that he affectionately dubs the Europeans.
Drinking mimosas and exploring the city of Durban.
Exactly. The majestic physical setting is entirely secondary to the chemistry of the people.
He proves this point again on his way back home. He has a layover in New York City, so he rents a car to do some sightseeing.
He goes to Central Park, he visits the diner from Seinfeld.
And he manages to meet up with an old friend named Jocelyn for a quick lunch. But because he did that, he hits catastrophic New York traffic.
It takes him 3 hours just to get back to JFK, and he completely misses his flight. He ends up having to sleep on the hard floor of the airport terminal.
And his reaction to missing the flight, he writes, "No regrets, just smiles and memories."
Because spending that hour with an old friend was worth the physical discomfort of sleeping on an airport floor.
The human connection was the priority. The building doesn't matter. The itinerary doesn't matter.
You see this play out on a massive scale in another post, the 2015 Phoenix Comic-Con experience. He attends this convention with over 80,000 people.
It's a logistical nightmare on paper. 2 massive buildings, 3 floors, endless panels, vendors, and tens of thousands of people walking around downtown in full cosplay with props and lightsabers.
He affectionately refers to the hardcore fans as sweaties, which is hilarious, but probably accurate.
Very accurate. But what is his primary takeaway from navigating 80,000 people in a confined space?
He observes the behavioral mechanics of the crowd. He notes that across the entire weekend, there wasn't a single incident.
No fights broke out. The police didn't have to subdue anyone. Everyone was incredibly pleasant and respectful.
He writes, "It was like Canada took over the convention center for the weekend in costume."
I love that line. Again, the physical convention center didn't create that peace. It was the shared passion, the mutual respect of a community gathered around a common love.
This philosophy of chemistry over circumstance absolutely dominates his film reviews, particularly when he looks at buddy comedies. He consistently argues that the plot of a movie is largely irrelevant if the human connection isn't there.
Take his review of Central Intelligence. He is brutally honest about the film's flaws.
He really doesn't hold back.
No. He admits the story is weak, the plot is entirely predictable, and the pacing drags while establishing Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's character.
Yet he still gives the movie a strong recommendation. Why?
Because the electric chemistry between The Rock and Kevin Hart saves the entire endeavor. The plot is just a flimsy vehicle for their interpersonal connection.
He applies the same logic to The Nice Guys, directed by Shane Black. It's a 1970s Hollywood murder mystery. But the mystery itself isn't what makes it one of his favorite movies of the year.
It's the mechanical friction between Russell Crowe, who plays this rigid, brutal enforcer, and Ryan Gosling, who plays a sloppy, alcoholic private investigator.
It's their unlikely partnership and how they navigate their flaws alongside Gosling's remarkably intelligent daughter that creates the movie magic.
We see it yet again in his analysis of The Man from UNCLE. This was a film that bombed commercially, pulling in only $15 million opening weekend against a $75 million budget.
The author points out the circumstantial reasons for the failure, like it was released too close to massive hits like Mission Impossible and Straight Outta Compton.
But he praises the film immensely. He finds incredible joy in the unlikely pairing of Henry Cavill as a suave CIA agent and Armie Hammer as a brute force KGB agent during the Cold War.
Brain and brawn forced to work together. Their chemistry entirely overcomes the campiness of the spy plot.
And for much more serious exploration of this, look at how he breaks down Steven Spielberg's Bridge of Spies.
Oh, this is a great example. You have Tom Hanks playing an American lawyer during the absolute height of the Cold War, and he is tasked with defending a suspected Soviet spy, played by Mark Rylance.
The author provides vital historical context here. He notes that the American slogan at the time was, "Better dead than red." The societal hatred towards Soviets was unprecedented.
The entire architecture of their society demanded that these two men hate each other.
But the movie works because of the mechanism of their respect. These two men, from completely opposing worlds, find common ground in their shared convictions.
Rylance's character refuses to betray his country, and Hanks' character refuses to abandon the principles of the American justice system, even when everyone hates him for it.
They recognize the integrity in each other. They connect over their shared humanity, despite the political architecture trying to tear them apart.
So, synthesizing the cook from Roquelier, the Jurassic Park wedding, the Comic-Con crowd, and these unlikely film duos, the actionable life lesson here is profound.
Your community is not the building you meet in. It is not your flawless itinerary or your perfect project plan.
True community is the friction and heat of the kitchen. Invest in your co-stars. Seek out shared experiences and unlikely partnerships.
And if the physical structure of your group burns down or the plan gets ruined by traffic, you should still be able to find joy in the people you are with.
But let's look at the dark side of that friction.
Yeah, it's not all mimosas in Durban.
Right. When you put all those co-stars in the same room, when you are constantly interacting with other people, eventually someone plays out of tune.
Someone steps on someone else's toes.
You make mistakes, you cause pain, and you experience regret. How does this author handle the negative consequences of dealing with other people?
That question brings us to our third major theme, reframing the negative, exploring regret, selfishness, and karma.
And to understand his approach, we have to look at a very brief, almost cryptic essay called Perspective, The Tree.
This post is fascinating because it's mostly visual. It's literally just a photograph of a burnt, charred tree standing in a landscape, followed by a series of questions posed to the reader.
He asks you to examine your own interpretive mechanism. When you look at the burnt tree, what do you see?
Do you see a tragedy? The ruined remains of a place where people used to find shade?
Do you see a warning, a reminder that fire is destructive and you need to be prepared for the worst?
Do you just see an ugly obstacle blocking an otherwise beautiful, foggy landscape?
Or do you see a symbol of resilience, proof that beyond death there is life, and that once you pass the dead tree, you can still enjoy the living grass around it?
The underlying mechanic he is exposing is that perspective is an active choice. You are looking at the exact same physical data point, a dead piece of wood, but your internal framing dictates whether you feel despair, fear, annoyance, or hope.
And he applies this exact same mechanic of reframing directly to the concept of human regret in an essay titled 2020.
He anchors this essay with a quote from the Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard.
Kierkegaard wrote, "I see it all perfectly. There are two possible situations. One can either do this or that. My honest opinion and my friendly advice is this. Do it or do not do it. You will regret both."
Which, if you just read it on the surface, sounds incredibly bleak and depressing.
It really does. It sounds like, why even bother?
Exactly. But we have to explain what Kierkegaard actually meant. He meant that regret is an unavoidable condition of human choice, because when we choose a path, we can never know what the alternative would have actually been like.
We always romanticize the unchosen path.
Right. The author uses this philosophical reality to urge the listener to shift their focus. Since you are going to feel some form of regret regardless, you must question the intent behind your actions.
He argues that the deepest regret usually happens when outcomes fall outside of our control. The plan failed, the business went under, the relationship ended.
But he challenges the reader to examine the why. If your heart was in the right place, if your intent was pure, and you honestly tried to do the right thing, then you must unburden yourself.
The outcome may be bad, but the guilt is unnecessary.
He takes this reframing of intent to an almost controversial place in another post titled, "Is Being Selfish a Negative All the Time?"
Yeah, this one is interesting.
He explores the mechanism of human motivation. He argues that helping others just so you can feel the joy of their success is actually a good type of selfishness.
He asks the reader, isn't it better to be a selfish friend who shares their thoughts and resources to potentially better someone else's life than to be a selfish person who hoards all their knowledge and resources just for themselves?
I mean, it's a fair question.
I have to push back on this good selfishness idea, though.
Let's hear it.
If I'm helping a friend solely because it makes me feel powerful or happy, isn't that just using my friends to stroke my own ego? It
Okay.
feels a bit manipulative.
I see what you mean.
It's like buying a gift for someone that you actually just want to play with yourself. Like buying your kid an expensive drone because you really want to fly it.
That is a very sharp critique. The danger of ego is real. But if we look closely at the author's argument, he is evaluating this from a macro perspective of utility.
Okay, looking at the results.
He is looking at the tangible results. If the end result of your action is mutual uplift, if your friend actually succeeds, gets the job, or feels supported because of your help, then the psychological motivation behind it is secondary.
It is a functional win-win.
Exactly. He expands on this macro view of shared experience in his essay, Our Story, Our Impact, Our History.
He quotes Martin Luther King Jr. in that essay. We are not makers of history. We are made by history.
He uses that quote to argue that when we struggle with our individual pain or our individual mistakes, we have to look to shared historical experiences for context. We are never suffering in a vacuum.
Thousands of footsteps have already paved the way through whatever tragedy you're experiencing. We have to look at the macro impact of our shared humanity to find comfort.
Okay, so if we are supposed to learn from history and examine our intent, how do we process massive systemic mistakes? What happens when society as a whole has a terrible intent?
The expert analysis he does on the movie The Big Short is a perfect exploration of this.
The Big Short is a fascinating film about the 2008 housing market crash, and the author praises this film for a very specific, highly unusual mechanical choice by the director, Adam McKay.
He praises the film for actively insulting and talking down to its audience.
He loves that the movie belittles the viewer's intelligence. He literally writes, "How do you insult an entire audience?" and then they give you rave reviews.
To understand why this works, we have to look at how the film explains the fraud. The director assumes the average audience member is entirely ignorant about high-level finance.
And frankly, too distracted by pop culture to care.
Exactly. So the film pauses the narrative and uses celebrities like Margot Robbie in a bubble bath or Anthony Bourdain in a kitchen to explain complex financial instruments directly to the camera.
He specifically mentions how the film uses Jenga blocks to explain collateralized debt obligations.
Right. The concept of the Jenga block analogy is brilliant. You have a tower of blocks. The blocks at the bottom represent the riskiest subprime mortgages.
And the film physically shows that if you pull out that shaky foundation of bad loans, the entire massive tower of the global economy collapses.
The author argues that this isn't just a quirky educational tool, it is a weaponized mirror. By forcing the audience to learn about this fraud from celebrities using children's toys, the film forces the audience to confront their own ignorance.
It tells the viewer, you were part of the problem because you were too distracted to pay attention to the people handling your money.
And then, the author highlights how the film points the ultimate blame at the federal government and the banking institutions, framing them as fully aware that the system was fraudulent, but doing nothing to stop it.
It is a masterclass in making people face their ignorance head-on. It forces the audience to reframe their understanding of their own history.
But what happens when people absolutely refuse to learn? What happens when someone ignores their past actions, refuses to examine their intent, and just keeps moving blindly forward?
To illustrate the horrific consequences of unlearned lessons, we have to talk about his short story, The Neighborhood.
This story is a massive tonal shift from the rest of the blog.
It reads like a gritty, hard-boiled mafia thriller, but it has this incredibly dark supernatural twist that entirely recontextualizes the plot.
It is incredibly dark. The story drops us into a tense scene in an abandoned warehouse. A mob boss is interrogating a captured assassin, a guy they call the Smooth Talker.
We learn through the dialogue that the assassin was hired to kill the boss's daughter, and he succeeded.
He actually walked into the warehouse holding a box containing her severed head.
The psychological tension in the room is suffocating. The boss is eerily, unnaturally calm. He has his right-hand man, an enforcer named Mikey, brutally beat the assassin.
The author describes the violence in vivid detail. Brass knuckles, breaking ribs, fracturing the man's jaw. They're trying to force the assassin to reveal who hired him to kill the daughter.
But despite the brutal beating, the assassin simply will not speak. He just takes the punishment.
So the boss finally tires of it. He tells Mikey to just behead the assassin and be done with it.
Mikey raises a blade and chops the assassin's head off. But the second the head hits the floor, Mikey turns around, looking completely confused.
And the boss raises a gun and shoots his best friend Mikey twice in the head, killing him instantly.
It is a chaotic, seemingly senseless act of violence. And this is exactly where the narrative perspective violently shifts.
Suddenly, the warehouse is gone. We're in a sterile, bright hospital room. The mob boss wakes up, but he is completely paralyzed. He can't move a muscle.
A nurse is standing over his bed, casually throwing away an empty syringe. She turns and starts talking to him, but it's not the nurse speaking, it's the voice of a ghost.
The mechanism of the supernatural twist is revealed. The ghost explains to the paralyzed boss that 20 years ago, the boss ordered Mikey to murder a young, innocent neighborhood patrol cop.
The cop's spirit was trapped and spent 2 decades figuring out how to possess human bodies, jumping from host to host entirely to orchestrate this revenge.
The ghost masterminded the entire tragedy. The ghost possessed a rival crime boss to hire the assassin. Then, the ghost possessed the assassin to physically deliver the daughter's head to the warehouse.
Then, during the interrogation, the ghost possessed Mikey, forcing him to endure the beating and execute the assassin.
And finally, the ghost possessed the boss himself, forcing his funger to pull the trigger and murder his best friend Mikey before walking the boss's body out of the warehouse and into the street to get hit by a speeding truck.
And as the boss lies there paralyzed in the hospital bed, the ghost reveals that the syringe wasn't medicine, it was poison. The boss is going to die in exactly 5 minutes.
The history he thought he buried 20 years ago, the regret he refused to acknowledge, the terrible intent he never atoned for, literally possessed the people around him and systematically dismantled his entire life.
It is the ultimate manifestation of karma. So if we pull back from the mob violence and the financial collapse, what is the actionable life lesson for you, the listener?
Reframe your past before it destroys your future. Use regret as a diagnostic tool to examine your intent. Allow yourself the pragmatic joy of lifting others up.
And face your own ignorance head-on, even if it requires a movie explaining it to you with Jenga blocks. Because if you ignore your past actions, if you refuse to learn from your history, it will eventually, inevitably, catch up to you.
It is a profoundly sobering thought. Facing our past, dealing with our failures and our regrets, that requires carrying a lot of heavy psychological baggage.
It does.
Which leads us to the final necessary piece of this puzzle. How do we eventually put that baggage down? How do we shed the weight of our history so we can actually find joy in the present moment?
That brings us to our fourth and final theme extracted from the blog. The art of moving forward, shedding leaves, and embracing the now.
The author uses a beautiful natural metaphor to explain the mechanics of letting go in an essay called A Seasonal Reminder. He writes about the transition into fall, and he observes the trees.
He argues that human beings need to emulate autumn leaves.
The biological mechanism of a tree in autumn is to cut off nutrients to the leaves so they fall. It is a necessary shedding to survive the winter.
The author states that we must naturally shed the trappings, the failures, and the anxieties of yesterday. The leaves have a natural, required progression to release and fall, and if we want to survive, so must we.
He pairs this observation with another essay called Day's End. He quotes the legendary American poet Robert Frost, who famously said that in 3 words, he can sum up everything he's learned about life. It goes on.
The author points out a critical flaw in human behavior. We waste a massive amount of our daily energy compounding our stress by constantly reevaluating past problems.
We spend so much mental bandwidth trying to figure out retroactive solutions to yesterday's predicaments that we completely forget to live today.
He illustrates the psychological danger of getting stuck in the past brilliantly through his review of Tim Burton's film, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children.
This is the perfect cinematic metaphor for the refusal to move forward.
In the film, you have these children with bizarre special powers living in a creepy mansion. But the mechanical plot point that drives the story is that they are trapped in a time loop.
Right. During World War II, a bomb was dropped on their house. To save them, the headmistress, Miss Peregrine, stops time right before the bomb hits and rewinds it 24 hours.
They repeat the exact same day, doing the exact same chores on a strict, unyielding schedule over and over and over again for decades, just to avoid the moment the bomb drops.
The author zeroes in on this. The time loop is the ultimate physical manifestation of people who refuse to move forward out of fear.
They prefer the stifling comfort of a familiar, repeating past, even if it's restrictive and unnatural, over the terror of stepping into an unknown future where a bomb might destroy them.
But you cannot live in a loop forever. It stunts your growth. To see the alternative, we have to look at his review of the indie sci-fi film Midnight Special.
A film he absolutely adored, placing it in his top 10 favorite films of that year.
The contrast is striking. You have Michael Shannon playing a father who is on the run with his young son. The boy has these unique, terrifying powers. He can shoot blinding light from his eyes. He can communicate with raw electronics.
Because of this, dangerous religious cults and armed federal agents are aggressively hunting him down.
But look at the father's response to the danger. He isn't trying to hide his son in a protective time loop. He isn't retreating to the past.
He is risking everything, enduring fistfights, surviving high-speed car chases, taking gunshots, entirely to move his son forward toward a specific coordinate.
He is pushing through the absolute terror of the present to deliver his son into a brilliant, completely unknown future. He breaks the loop.
But as the author points out, pushing forward into the future requires serious internal work. You can't just run blindly forward and expect everything to fall into place.
In his essay Completion, he breaks down the human desire for connection. He notes that we are constantly pursuing the yin to our yang.
We are always looking for external relationships to complete us, to fill the missing pieces of our soul.
But he drops a massive philosophical anchor here. He quotes Socrates, "The unexamined life is not worth living."
What does Socrates actually mean by that in the context of finding a partner?
It means that if you don't look inward to figure out why you need someone, you will inevitably pick the wrong puzzle piece.
The author warns the reader that you cannot possibly recognize your better half. You cannot find the true yin to your yang if you haven't done the painful internal work to examine your own strengths, your own flaws, and your own baggage first.
You have to deeply know yourself in the present reality before you can successfully build a future with someone else.
Which brings us to what is perhaps the most piercing, direct question he asks across the entire 5 years of this blog. In a short essay titled, "Did the Mirror Smile Back?" He strips away all the movie metaphors, all the travel anecdotes, and all the heavy philosophy.
He just looks at the reader and asks, regardless of your grand 5-year plans, regardless of the sorrows you are carrying from your past, are you actually happy today?
It is a profound check on our daily reality. He notes the tragedy of two specific types of people. First, those who are so hyper-focused on achieving a future goal that they completely ignore their current daily misery.
And second, those who are so comfortable wallowing in their past sorrow that they forfeit any future joy, simply because pain is the only emotion they still recognize.
He writes, "This time we have is brief, and to squander it without joy is truly a fool's errand."
So the actionable life lesson for this final section is clear. Stop repeating the exact same day out of fear of the bomb dropping.
Do the hard, internal Socratic work to actually know yourself.
Shed the heavy stress of yesterday just like autumn leaves falling from a tree, and prioritize finding genuine, observable joy in the present moment.
If we pull all the way back and synthesize everything we've explored today across these wildly diverse sources, an incredibly cohesive, actionable philosophy for living emerges.
First, you must take the pen and write your own uninked sheet music. Be the active daily composer of your life, even when your body fails or the notes go wrong.
Second, build real, resilient communities based on the friction of shared experiences, not on physical structures or commercial distractions.
Third, use your regrets as a tool to examine your intent and face your history so it doesn't possess your future.
And finally, shed the heavy leaves of the past so you can live happily and fully in the present.
And to you, the listener, we want to remind you that this isn't just abstract late-night philosophy. Whether you are prepping for a massive, high-stakes boardroom meeting, whether you are trying to navigate a creative slump, or you are just trying to figure out how to be a more supportive friend, these underlying mechanics apply.
The blueprint for a better life is out there, hidden in the margins of movie reviews, Comic-Con crowds, and travel diaries.
Which brings us to our final thought, something for you to deeply mull over as you go about the rest of your day. We started this deep dive by talking about life as a blank piece of sheet music that you are actively composing in real time.
The tiny actions and choices you make today are the literal notes being printed on the page.
So I want you to ask yourself, if someone were to take the sheet music of your last 24 hours, put it on a stand, and play that exact melody back to you right now, what kind of song would it be?
And more importantly, is it a song you'd actually want to listen to?
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the margins.
Keep exploring, keep composing your song, and we'll see you next time.